The neighborhood mechanic called me. "Your wife sent your car in for a tune-up for the trip. Don't drive it. Just trust me." He sounded terrified. "Why?" I asked. "The police will explain." Minutes later, sirens pulled up in front of my house. "I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached." I was just finishing my second cup of coffee when the phone rang. It was Tuesday morning, and I had been looking forward to our weekend trip to the lake cabin. Julie had been planning this getaway for weeks, talking about how we both needed to reconnect after what she called my difficult year at the auto shop. The caller ID showed Dave's garage. I smiled, thinking Dave was calling to confirm that our car was ready for pickup. We had dropped it off yesterday for what Julie insisted was a necessary tune-up before our long drive. "Morning, Dave," I answered cheerfully. The silence that followed lasted long enough to make my stomach tighten. When Dave finally spoke, his voice was strained, almost whispered. "Walter, listen to me very carefully. Do not drive that car. Do you hear me? Do not get behind the wheel of your Honda." I set my coffee mug down slowly, my hand suddenly unsteady. "What are you talking about? What's wrong with the car?" "I can't explain over the phone. Just trust me on this. The police are on their way to your house right now." My heart started pounding. "The police? Dave, what the hell is going on?" "Your wife brought the car in yesterday. She was very specific about what she wanted me to check. Very specific." His voice broke slightly. "Walter, I've known you for 23 years. I couldn't let this happen." The line went dead. I stood there holding the phone, my mind racing. Julie had said she was taking the car for a routine maintenance check. Oil change, maybe brake fluid. Nothing unusual. But Dave's voice carried a terror I had never heard before. I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at our empty driveway. The Honda was still at Dave's shop. Julie had taken her sedan to her book club meeting this morning, same as every Tuesday for the past 5 years. Sirens. Distant at first, then growing louder. My throat went dry as 2 police cars pulled into our driveway, followed by what looked like a crime scene van. I watched through the curtains as 4 officers got out, their expressions serious and professional. One of them carried a clipboard. Another had a camera. The doorbell rang, and I waited a moment before answering. My hands were shaking. "Mr. Walter Henderson." The lead officer was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes but a firm voice. "Yes, that's me." "I'm Detective Rodriguez, and this is Officer Martinez. We need to talk to you about your vehicle. May we come in?" I stepped aside and they entered our living room. The same living room where Julie and I had watched movies just last night, her head resting on my shoulder while she talked about how excited she was for our lake trip. "Mr. Henderson, we received a call from David Chen at Dave's garage. He reported finding evidence of tampering with your vehicle's brake system." The words hit me like cold water. "Tampering?" Detective Rodriguez opened her clipboard. "The brake lines appear to have been deliberately compromised. If you had driven that vehicle at highway speeds, especially on mountain roads like those leading to Lake Tahoe, the brakes would have failed completely." I sank into my armchair, the same chair where I read the morning paper every day for the past 15 years. "Someone tried to sabotage my car. That's what we're investigating. Mr. Chen said your wife brought the vehicle in yesterday and specifically requested that he check the brake system. When he began his inspection, he found that someone had made small punctures in the brake lines. The holes were tiny, designed to cause a slow leak that would result in total brake failure after 30 to 40 minutes of driving." My mouth went completely dry. Julie had insisted on the tune-up. She had even offered to handle it herself, saying I was too busy at my own shop to take care of our personal vehicle. "Where is your wife now, Mr. Henderson?" "Book club. She goes every Tuesday morning. Has for years." I looked at the clock on the mantel. "Should be back around noon." Detective Rodriguez made a note. "We'll need to speak with her. In the meantime, we'd like your permission to have our crime scene technician examine your home, particularly any areas where automotive tools might be stored." I nodded numbly. "The garage. I have a full workshop in the garage." As the officers began their work, I sat alone in my living room, trying to process what I had just learned. Someone had tried to kill me. The brake failure would have happened on those winding mountain roads, where a car without brakes would plummet hundreds of feet into rocky ravines. But who would want me dead? I thought about my life, searching for enemies. I ran a small auto repair shop, same as I had for the past 32 years. I paid my taxes, went to church occasionally, kept to myself mostly. I had no debts beyond our mortgage, no angry customers that I could think of, no bitter business rivals. The front door opened and Julie's voice carried from the entryway. "Walter, whose cars are those in our driveway?" She appeared in the doorway, still holding her purse, her face flushed from the morning air. When she saw Detective Rodriguez, her expression shifted to confusion and concern. "What's happening? Is everything okay?" Detective Rodriguez stood. "Mrs. Henderson, I'm Detective Rodriguez. We need to ask you some questions about your husband's vehicle." Julie's eyes went wide. "The Honda? What about it?" "You brought it to Dave's garage yesterday for service?" "Yes, for a tune-up. We're taking a trip this weekend." She looked at me, her face full of worry. "Walter, what's wrong? You look pale." Detective Rodriguez watched Julie carefully as she spoke. "Mrs. Henderson, did you give any specific instructions about what should be checked on the vehicle?" Julie frowned as if trying to remember. "I asked Dave to check everything, especially the brakes. I wanted to make sure we'd be safe on those mountain roads." She turned to me again. "You know how nervous I get about that drive to the lake. Mrs. Henderson, when you brought the car in, did you notice anything unusual about it? Any sounds, any problems with the braking?" "No, nothing like that. It seemed fine to me." Julie's voice was getting higher, more anxious. "Please, someone tell me what's going on." Detective Rodriguez looked at me, then back at Julie. "Someone tampered with your husband's brake lines. If he had driven that car, the brakes would have failed completely." Julie's purse slipped from her hand and hit the floor. "What?" "Someone tried to hurt Walter." She rushed to my chair and knelt beside it, taking my hands in hers. "Oh my God, Walter, who would do something like this?" Her hands were warm, soft, the same hands that had made me coffee this morning. The same hands that had straightened my collar before I left for work yesterday. I looked into her brown eyes, searching for something I couldn't name. "I don't know," I said quietly. The crime scene technician came in from the garage carrying an evidence bag. "Detective, you need to see this." Detective Rodriguez excused herself and stepped outside with the technician. Through the window, I could see them having an intense conversation. The technician was pointing at something in the bag. Julie squeezed my hands. "This is terrifying. What if you had driven the car? What if something had happened to you on those mountain roads?" I studied her face. The worry seemed genuine. The fear in her voice sounded real, but something nagged at me, something I couldn't quite identify. Detective Rodriguez returned, her expression more serious than before. "Mr. Henderson, we found automotive tools in your garage that appear to have brake fluid residue on them. Fresh residue." I felt confused. "Well, yes, I work on cars for a living. I have brake fluid in my garage. But these tools show evidence of very recent use on brake lines, and they match the type of damage done to your vehicle." Julie's grip on my hands tightened. "You don't think Walter did this to himself, do you? That's ridiculous." "We're not suggesting that, Mrs. Henderson. But someone with access to your garage and a knowledge of automotive repair clearly did this. We'll need to dust for fingerprints and take samples." As the afternoon wore on, our quiet house filled with the sounds of investigation. Photography, measurements, careful bagging of evidence. Julie made coffee for everyone and answered questions with what seemed like complete honesty and cooperation. But that night, as we lay in bed, I found myself staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Julie was curled up beside me, breathing softly, occasionally murmuring in her dreams. I thought about the past few months. Had there been signs? Changes in her behavior that I had missed? Actually, yes, there had been changes. She had started exercising more, losing weight. She said it was for our health, that she wanted us both to live longer, happier lives. She had also become more interested in our finances, asking detailed questions about my business, our savings, our insurance policies. Just last week, she had suggested we increase my life insurance policy. "You work with dangerous equipment every day," she had said. "I just want to make sure I'm taken care of if something happens." At the time, it had seemed like a reasonable concern from a loving wife. Now, lying in the darkness, those memories felt different. Julie stood beside me, her hand reaching across the bed to find mine. Even in sleep, she sought the comfort of our connection. I wanted to believe that someone else had done this. A stranger, a random criminal, anyone but the woman who had shared my life for 18 years. But as dawn approached and Julie continued sleeping peacefully beside me, one thought kept circling through my mind. Whoever had sabotaged my car had known exactly how to access my garage, exactly which tools to use, and exactly when I would be driving those mountain roads. Someone had wanted me dead, and they had planned it very, very carefully. The next morning I couldn't concentrate on anything. Julie made her usual breakfast. Scrambled eggs, wheat toast, fresh orange juice, but I could barely taste any of it. She chatted about normal things, the weather, her plans to visit her sister Martha next week, whether we should postpone our lake trip given what had happened. "Maybe we should stay home this weekend," she said, buttering her toast. "After everything that happened yesterday, I just want to keep you close." I nodded absently, watching her hands, those same hands that had held mine so tenderly when the police delivered their terrible news. "Yeah, maybe that's best." She reached across the table and touched my arm. "You seem distracted, honey. Are you okay?" "Just thinking about who could have done this." Julie's expression grew serious. "I've been thinking about that too. What about Tommy Morrison?" I frowned. "Tommy? Why would you think of him?" "Well, you fired him last month, and he was pretty angry about it." That was true. Tommy had worked for me for 6 months before I discovered he was stealing parts from customers and selling them online. When I confronted him, he had gotten belligerent, accusing me of being a cheap old man who didn't pay him enough. "But Tommy doesn't know where we live, and he certainly doesn't have access to our garage." Julie shrugged. "Maybe he followed you home one day. Maybe he's been watching us." The thought sent a chill down my spine, but something about it didn't feel right. Tommy was angry and dishonest, but he was also lazy and disorganized. The sabotage of my car had required planning, patience, and precise technical knowledge. After Julie left to run errands, I called Dave's garage. "Walter?" Dave's voice was still strained. "How are you holding up?" "I need to ask you something, Dave. Yesterday, when Julie brought the car in, what exactly did she say?" There was a pause. "She said she wanted a complete inspection before your trip. But then she got very specific about the brakes. She said you'd been complaining that they felt spongy." I felt my stomach drop. "I never complained about the brakes, Dave. They were fine." "That's what I thought. Your car's only got 38,000 miles on it. The brakes are practically new." Dave's voice lowered. "Walter, there's something else. She paid in cash. $200 in 20s. She said you preferred cash transactions for tax purposes." I had never said anything like that to Julie. In fact, I always insisted on checks or credit cards for our personal automotive work to keep proper records. "Did she seem nervous? Anxious?" "Actually, no, she seemed very calm, very focused. She knew exactly what she wanted me to check and in what order." After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the phone. Julie had lied to Dave about multiple things. The spongy brakes. My preference for cash payments. She had been calm and focused while arranging for my car to be sabotaged. My hands shook as I dialed Detective Rodriguez. "Mr. Henderson, how are you doing today?" "Detective, I need to tell you something. My wife lied to the mechanic about why she brought the car in. She told him I had been complaining about spongy brakes, but I never said anything like that." There was a pause. "That's interesting information, Mr. Henderson. Is there anything else about your wife's recent behavior that seems unusual?" I thought carefully. "She's been asking a lot of questions about my life insurance policy, and she's been more interested in our finances lately." "When did this start?" "Maybe 3 or 4 months ago." Detective Rodriguez made notes. "Mr. Henderson, I need to ask you something confidential. Is your marriage happy? Any problems between you and your wife?" The question hit me like a punch. "I thought so. I mean, yes, we're happy. We've been married 18 years. We don't fight much. We enjoy each other's company." "Any extramarital affairs? Financial troubles? Gambling problems?" "No, nothing like that." But even as I said it, I realized how little I actually knew about Julie's daily life. She had her book club, her exercise routine, her shopping trips with friends. I worked long hours at the shop and trusted her to manage our household affairs. Detective, how difficult would it be to check my wife's recent activities? Her phone records, credit card statements, that sort of thing. We'd need a warrant for most of that information, but if you have access to your joint accounts, you could review those yourself. After hanging up, I walked to our home office. Julie handled most of our bills and paperwork, saying she enjoyed keeping our household organized. I rarely looked at our statements in detail, trusting her to manage everything properly. I pulled out the file cabinet and began going through our recent credit card statements. At first, everything looked normal. Grocery stores, gas stations, the usual household expenses. But then I noticed something odd. 3 charges to Precision Auto Tools over the past 2 months, totaling $437. I had never heard of Precision Auto Tools, and Julie certainly had no reason to buy automotive equipment. I went online and looked up the company. They specialized in professional-grade tools for brake and hydraulic system repair. According to their website, their customers were primarily auto repair shops and experienced mechanics. My chest felt tight as I scrolled through their catalog. Small, precise tools for accessing brake lines, equipment designed for detailed hydraulic work. Everything someone would need to carefully sabotage a car's braking system. I printed out the credit card statements and continued searching through our files. In our insurance folder, I found something that made my blood run cold. 3 weeks ago, Julie had requested information about increasing my life insurance policy from $50,000 to $200,000. The paperwork was already filled out, requiring only my signature. She had never mentioned this to me. I found more documents. She had also inquired about the details of my business insurance, specifically asking about death benefits and business continuation policies. She had requested information about our joint bank accounts, asking what would happen to the funds if I died. All of this had been done without my knowledge during her errands and lunch dates with friends. My phone rang, startling me. It was Julie. "Hi, honey, I'm at the grocery store. Do you want me to pick up anything special for dinner?" Her voice sounded normal, cheerful, loving, the same voice that had comforted me yesterday when we learned about the sabotage. "Just whatever you think is good," I managed to say. "Are you okay? You sound strange." "I'm fine, just tired." "Well, maybe tonight we can watch a movie and relax. I rented that action film you wanted to see." After she hung up, I sat surrounded by evidence that my wife of 18 years had been planning my death. The credit card charges for brake tools, the insurance inquiries, the lies she had told Dave about my concerns with the car. But the most chilling discovery was still to come. I found a small notebook tucked behind our insurance files, written in Julie's neat handwriting. The first few pages contained normal household notes, grocery lists, appointments, phone, numbers. But toward the back, I found pages that made my hands tremble. Mountain roads, brake failure, most believable. Highway speeds need 30 to 40 minutes of driving. Weekend trip. No witnesses, remote location. Insurance payout. 200,000 plus business policy. The notes were dated from 6 weeks ago. She had been planning this for over a month. I heard her car pull into the driveway and quickly put everything back where I had found it. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure she would hear it when she walked in. "Walter, I'm back." Julie came into the kitchen carrying grocery bags, smiling and humming softly. She looked beautiful, relaxed, happy. The same woman who had slept peacefully beside me last night while I lay awake wondering who wanted me dead. "I got everything for your favorite dinner," she said, kissing my cheek. "Pot roast with those little potatoes you love." I tried to smile back, but my face felt frozen. "That sounds great." As she moved around the kitchen, unpacking groceries and chatting about her day, I watched her hands. The same hands that had purchased brake line tools. The same hands that had filled out life insurance forms. The same hands that had calmly directed Dave to check the brakes on a car she had sabotaged. "You're staring at me," she said with a laugh. "What are you thinking about?" "Just how lucky I am to have you," I said, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. She beamed at me. "I feel the same way. You know, after what happened yesterday, it really made me realize how precious our time together is. Life can change so quickly." That evening, as Julie prepared our dinner with the same care and attention she had shown for 18 years, I excused myself to call Detective Rodriguez from our bedroom. "Detective, I found some things you need to see." credit card charges for brake tools, insurance paperwork I never knew about, and a notebook with what looks like planning notes. Mr. Henderson, are you somewhere safe? Is your wife in the house with you? Yes, she's downstairs cooking dinner. Don't confront her. Don't let her know what you've found. Can you bring the evidence to the station tomorrow morning? Yes, but what do I do until then? How do I act normal around her? There was a pause. Just try to behave as you normally would. Don't give her any reason to suspect that you know anything. As I hung up, I heard Julie calling from downstairs. Walter, dinner's ready. I walked down to our dining room where she had set the table with our good china and lit candles. The pot roast smelled delicious, and she had even opened a bottle of wine. This looks wonderful, I said, sitting down across from her. She raised her wine glass. To surviving whatever life throws at us. I clinked my glass against hers, knowing that the woman I had loved for 18 years had been the one throwing it. As we ate dinner, Julie chatted about her plans for the week, her upcoming visit to her sister, a new recipe she wanted to try. She seemed genuinely happy, genuinely affectionate. But now I could see something else in her expressions. When she thought I wasn't looking, her eyes would grow distant, calculating. When she mentioned our future plans, there was something hollow in her voice. How long had she been planning this? How long had she been looking at me and seeing only an obstacle to remove? After dinner, she suggested we watch that movie she had rented. We curled up on the couch together, her head resting on my shoulder just as it had countless times before. But this time, instead of comfort, I felt only cold fear, because I was beginning to realize that the woman beside me wasn't just planning my death, she was enjoying it. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every time Julie shifted beside me, every soft breath she took reminded me that I was lying next to someone who had tried to kill me. When morning finally came, I told her I had some errands to run and left early for the police station. Detective Rodriguez was waiting for me with a cup of coffee and a grim expression. I spread out all the evidence I had found, the credit card statements, the insurance paperwork, Julie's notebook with its chilling planning notes. This is very compelling evidence, Mr. Henderson, she said after reviewing everything. But we need more to build a solid case. Would you be willing to cooperate with us in gathering additional information? What do you mean? We'd like to monitor your wife's communications and activities. With your permission, we can install recording equipment in your home and tap your phone lines. We need to catch her in the act of discussing or planning something incriminating. The thought of turning my own home into a surveillance operation made me feel sick, but I agreed. What choice did I have? They installed tiny recording devices throughout the house while Julie was at her weekly hair appointment. When she returned home that afternoon, she seemed unusually agitated. How was your appointment? I asked, trying to sound normal. Fine, but I'm worried about you, Walter. You've seemed so distant lately, ever since that thing with the car. I'm just shaken up, I guess. The idea that someone wants to hurt me. She sat down beside me on the couch and took my hands in hers. I know, honey. It's terrifying, but we'll get through this together. Her touch felt cold, despite the warmth of her skin. That evening, Julie said she needed to run to the store for milk. She was gone for almost 3 hours, far too long for a simple grocery run. When she returned, she seemed energized, almost excited. Sorry I took so long. I ran into Martha at the store and we ended up having coffee. But Martha was her sister who lived 2 hours away. I had spoken to Martha just last week, and she had mentioned being busy with work and unable to visit anytime soon. The next morning, Detective Rodriguez called me at my shop. Mr. Henderson, we've been monitoring your wife's cell phone. She's made several calls to a number registered to Marcus Henderson. Is that a relative of yours? My stomach dropped. Marcus was my younger brother, someone I hadn't spoken to in over 6 months due to a bitter argument about our parents' estate. Yes, that's my brother. But we're not on good terms right now. She's been calling him regularly for the past 2 months. Yesterday, after you left for the police station, she called him 3 times. We'd like to bring him in for questioning. I felt the world spinning around me. You think Marcus is involved in this? We think your wife isn't acting alone. They arrested Marcus that afternoon at his apartment across town. Within 2 hours, Detective Rodriguez called me with news that changed everything I thought I knew about my life. Mr. Henderson, your brother confessed to having an affair with your wife. It's been going on for 2 years. The words hit me like a physical blow. 2 years. Julie and Marcus had been betraying me for 2 years, and I had been completely oblivious. There's more, Detective Rodriguez continued. Your brother also confessed to the murder plot. He says it was your wife's idea, but he went along with it. They planned to wait a respectful period after your death, then get married and inherit everything you own. I had to sit down. My brother and my wife, the two people who should have been closest to me, had been planning my death while carrying on a secret affair behind my back. We need you to come to the station, Mr. Henderson. There are some recordings we want you to hear. An hour later, I sat in a small room at the police station, listening to phone conversations between Julie and Marcus that had been recorded over the past week. Julie's voice came through the speakers, clear and cold. He's getting suspicious. Yesterday, he was asking Dave questions about what I said when I brought the car in. Marcus responded, Maybe we should call this off, find another way. No, we've come too far. Besides, the brake thing almost worked. If that mechanic hadn't interfered, Walter would be dead right now and we'd be collecting insurance money. What if he figures it out? Julie's laugh was chilling. He won't. Walter's too trusting, too stupid. He still believes I love him. Even after the car thing, he's looking for other suspects. It never occurred to him that his loving wife might want him dead. The recording continued, and I heard them discussing backup plans. Poison in his coffee, a gas leak in the house while I slept, an accidental fall down our basement stairs. But the most devastating part came when Marcus asked Julie if she felt any guilt about what they were doing. Guilt? Julie's voice was genuinely surprised. Why would I feel guilty? I've been pretending to love that boring old man for 18 years. Do you know how exhausting that is? How hard it is to fake interest in his stupid stories about car repairs and baseball games? I deserve better than this life, Marcus. We both do. What about all those years? Didn't you ever actually love him? Julie was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was flat, emotionless. I married him because he was stable and I thought he'd be successful. But he never became anything more than a small-town mechanic. I wasted my best years on him. Now it's time to collect what I'm owed. I turned off the recording. I couldn't listen to any more. Detective Rodriguez watched me carefully. I'm sorry you had to hear that, Mr. Henderson. I felt numb, hollowed out. 18 years of marriage, and Julie had never loved me at all. She had been acting, performing the role of a devoted wife while secretly despising everything about me. What happens now? I asked. We arrest your wife. With your brother's confession and these recordings, we have enough evidence for conspiracy to commit murder. But, Mr. Henderson, there's something else you should know. I looked up at her. Your wife doesn't know we've arrested Marcus yet. We'd like to use that to our advantage. Would you be willing to go home and act normal for one more night? We want to see if she tries to contact him. And we want to record any conversations you might have with her. The thought of spending another night in the same house with Julie made me feel sick, but I agreed. When I got home, Julie was in the kitchen preparing dinner. She smiled when she saw me, the same warm, loving smile she had given me thousands of times over the years. How was your day, honey? Fine, just the usual. She came over and kissed my cheek. Her lips felt like ice against my skin. I was thinking we should plan a little vacation once all this stress dies down. Maybe that trip to Europe we always talked about. Europe. She was already spending my life insurance money in her mind. That sounds nice, I managed to say. During dinner, she chatted about normal things. The weather. A movie she wanted to see. Her sister Martha's upcoming visit. Another lie, since Martha wasn't planning to visit anytime soon. But I found myself studying her face, looking for signs of the deception I now knew was there. The practiced expressions, the calculated responses. How many times had she sat across from me at this same table, planning my death while asking about my day? After dinner, she suggested we take a walk around the neighborhood, something we did occasionally on nice evenings. As we walked, she slipped her arm through mine. I love you, Walter, she said softly. I know I don't say it enough, but I really do love you. The words that once would have filled me with warmth now felt like daggers. I knew she was lying. I had heard her real feelings in those recordings. When we got back to the house, Julie excused herself to take a shower. I heard her moving around upstairs, then heard her talking on her phone. She was trying to call Marcus, but of course he was in jail and couldn't answer. She came downstairs looking worried. That's strange. I've been trying to reach Martha all evening, but she's not answering her phone. Another lie. She had been calling Marcus, not Martha. I'm sure she's fine, I said. Julie nodded, but I could see anxiety in her eyes. In her mind, Marcus was part of her support system, her partner in crime. Not being able to reach him was making her nervous. That night, as we lay in bed, Julie seemed restless. She kept checking her phone, sending text messages to someone. Is everything okay? I asked. Just worried about Martha. It's not like her not to return my calls. I pretended to fall asleep, but I was listening to every sound she made. Around midnight, she slipped out of bed and went downstairs. I could hear her whispering into her phone, becoming increasingly agitated when no one answered. When she came back to bed, she was tense, worried. She lay awake for hours, and I could feel her anxiety radiating across the space between us. The next morning, Detective Rodriguez called early. Mr. Henderson, we're going to arrest your wife this morning. We have everything we need. Are you prepared for this? I looked across the kitchen table at Julie, who was drinking her coffee and reading the newspaper as if she didn't have a care in the world. Yes, I said quietly. I'm ready. 20 minutes later, police cars pulled into our driveway for the second time that week. But this time they weren't there to investigate a crime. They were there to arrest my wife. Julie's face went white when she saw them approaching the front door. For just a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw something cold and calculating flash across her features. Then she turned to me with wide, innocent eyes. Walter, what's happening? Why are the police here again? But even as she spoke, I could see that she already knew. The game was over, and she had lost. The arrest happened quickly and quietly. Detective Rodriguez read Julie her rights while Officer Martinez searched our house for additional evidence. Julie maintained her innocent act until the very end, tears streaming down her face as she insisted there had been some terrible mistake. Walter, you have to help me, she pleaded, as they put handcuffs on her wrists. Tell them I would never hurt you. Tell them how much I love you. I said nothing. I just watched as they led my wife of 18 years out of our home in handcuffs. The next few hours were a blur of police interviews, paperwork and phone calls from reporters who had somehow gotten wind of the story. Detective Rodriguez arranged for me to stay at a hotel for a few days while they processed the crime scene and gathered final evidence. That afternoon, she called me with an update. Your wife is refusing to talk without a lawyer, but your brother wants to see you. He says he has things he needs to tell you that weren't covered in his confession. I didn't want to see Marcus. The thought of facing my brother, the man who had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible, made me feel sick. But I also needed answers. I needed to understand how this had happened, how I had been so blind to what was happening in my own life. The county jail was a depressing concrete building on the outskirts of town. They led me to a small visiting room where Marcus was waiting, wearing an orange jumpsuit and looking older than his 43 years. He looked up when I walked in, and I saw genuine shame in his eyes. Walter. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. I sat down across from him, separated by a thick glass partition. We spoke through phones like strangers. Why? I asked. It was the only word I could manage. Marcus closed his eyes and took a deep breath. It started by accident. 2 years ago, when you and I had that big fight about Dad's estate, Julie called me. She said she was worried about you, that you seemed stressed and angry all the time. I remembered that fight. Marcus had wanted to sell our parents' farm immediately after they died, while I thought we should hold on to it for sentimental reasons. We had said harsh words to each other and hadn't spoken for months afterward. She invited me to lunch, Marcus continued. Said she wanted to patch things up between us, that family was too important to let business disagreements tear us apart. I listened, feeling sick as I began to understand how the seduction had begun. We started meeting occasionally. Just coffee, lunch, nothing inappropriate at first. But Julie was different when you weren't around. More vibrant, more alive. She talked about feeling trapped in her marriage, about how you'd grown distant and boring. I was never distant, I said quietly. I know that now, but at the time I believed her. She was very convincing. Marcus rubbed his face with his free hand. She made me feel like I was rescuing her from an unhappy marriage. When did it become physical? Marcus flinched. About 6 months after we started meeting. She said you hadn't been intimate in years, that you treated her more like a roommate than a wife. That was a lie. Julie and I had maintained a healthy physical relationship throughout our marriage. She had never expressed dissatisfaction or complained about our intimacy. She's a very good liar, Walter. She made me believe that you didn't appreciate her, that you took her for granted. She said she stayed with you out of loyalty and duty, but that she deserved to be with someone who truly valued her. And you believed her. I wanted to believe her. Marcus's voice cracked. I've always envied you, Walter. You had the successful business, the beautiful wife, the stable life. When Julie offered me a chance to have what you had, I took it. I felt a wave of disgust. So when did murder become part of the plan? Marcus was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. That was all Julie's idea. About 4 months ago, she started talking about how much easier everything would be if you weren't in the picture. At first I thought she was just venting, expressing frustration. But then she started getting specific. Specific how? She researched divorce laws in our state, found out that after 18 years of marriage, she'd be entitled to half of everything, but that your business assets were protected in a way that would make them difficult to claim. But if you died? He trailed off. If I died, she'd inherit everything. She also found out about some life insurance policies you had through your business that she'd never mentioned. Policies that would pay out over $400,000 if you died in an accident. $400,000. I had forgotten about those policies myself. They were old coverage I'd purchased years ago when I first started my business. She became obsessed with the idea. She researched different methods, different ways to make it look accidental. She spent hours online reading about car accidents, home accidents, workplace accidents. I thought about Julie sitting at our kitchen table with her laptop, claiming she was reading news articles or checking social media. She had actually been researching ways to kill me. When did she come up with the brake line plan? About 2 months ago. She said it was perfect because you'd be alone when it happened, on those winding mountain roads where accidents were common. She said no one would question a brake failure on an older vehicle. Our car is only 3 years old. I know, but she said she could make it look like a manufacturing defect or normal wear and tear. Marcus looked directly at me for the first time. Walter, I tried to talk her out of it. I swear I did. I told her we could just run away together, start over somewhere else. But she said you'd never let her go, that you'd track us down and make our lives miserable. Another lie? If Julie had asked for a divorce, I would have been devastated, but I never would have tried to stop her from being happy. She said the only way we could be together was if you were out of the picture permanently. I felt a cold rage building in my chest. So you helped her. I bought the tools she needed. I helped her research brake line placement and hydraulic systems. I even went to the auto parts store with her to make sure she got the right equipment. Marcus's voice was filled with self-loathing. I told myself I was just supporting her, that I wasn't really part of the planning. But I was. I was completely involved. Did you know she was going to blame Tommy Morrison? Marcus nodded miserably. That was her idea too. She said everyone would assume it was a disgruntled employee, especially since you'd fired him recently. She had it all planned out. I thought about how quickly Julie had suggested Tommy's name when we were discussing suspects. She had been laying groundwork, planting seeds of suspicion to protect herself. What was supposed to happen after I died? We were going to wait 6 months, then start dating publicly. Julie said people would think it was natural for her to turn to you family for comfort during her grief. Then we'd get married after a year or so. And you believed this would work? Marcus shook his head. I didn't think it through, Walter. I was thinking with my emotions, not my brain. I was so infatuated with her, so caught up in the fantasy of the life we'd have together, that I ignored how insane the whole plan was. I studied my brother's face. He looked broken, devastated by what he had done, but I felt no sympathy for him. Do you love her? I asked. Marcus was quiet for a long time. I thought I did, but after hearing her talk about you the way she did, after seeing how coldly she planned your death. I don't think I ever knew who she really was." "What do you mean?" "She talked about you like you were an obstacle, not a person. Like you were just something standing in the way of what she wanted. She never showed any emotion about it, never seemed conflicted or upset about planning to kill someone she'd lived with for 18 years. I thought about the recordings I'd heard, Julie's cold voice discussing my death like it was a business transaction. There's something else, Walter, something I didn't tell the police yet." I waited. This wasn't her first time. My blood turned to ice. "What do you mean?" "She told me about her first husband, the one who died in a car accident 5 years before she met you. I had known Julie was a widow when we met, but she had always been reluctant to discuss her first marriage, claiming it was too painful to talk about. She said his death wasn't really an accident. She said she had helped it along, but that it had been easier that time because he was already a heavy drinker with health problems." I felt like the room was spinning around me. She murdered her first husband. She made it sound like she just encouraged his self-destructive behavior, bought him more alcohol, discouraged him from seeing doctors. But Walter, the way she talked about it, she was proud of herself. She said it taught her how to be patient, how to plan carefully. I was going to be sick. I had married a serial killer, a woman who made a habit of murdering her husbands for financial gain. "Why didn't you tell the police this?" "I was scared they wouldn't believe me, and I was hoping—" Marcus's voice broke completely. "I was hoping she really loved me, that maybe with you gone she'd be different. You realize she probably would have killed you too eventually." Marcus nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I know that now. Once she got what she wanted from your death, I would have become a liability, someone who knew too much about what she'd done." We sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Marcus spoke again. "Walter, I know you'll never forgive me. I don't expect you to, but I need you to know that I'm going to tell the police everything about her first husband. She needs to be stopped." I stood up to leave. "You're right about one thing, Marcus. I will never forgive you." As I walked out of the jail, I felt a strange mixture of devastation and relief. Devastated because my entire life had been built on lies and betrayal. Relief because I finally understood the truth. That evening, Detective Rodriguez called to tell me that Julie had finally agreed to talk. Her lawyer had advised her to cooperate in exchange for a plea deal. "She's trying to claim that your brother was the mastermind, that she was coerced into going along with the plan," Detective Rodriguez said. "But we have recordings of her clearly taking the lead in planning your death. Her story isn't holding up." "There's something else you need to know," I said, and told her what Marcus had revealed about Julie's first husband. "We'll investigate that immediately. If she's done this before, it changes everything about how we proceed with the case." As I hung up the phone, I realized that my old life was completely over. My marriage, my relationship with my brother, my sense of security and trust, all of it had been destroyed in the space of a few days. But I also realized something else. For the first time in years, maybe for the first time since I'd married Julie, I felt completely free. The woman who had been planning to kill me was in jail. The brother who had betrayed me was confessing to his crimes. And I was still alive, still breathing, still able to build something new from the wreckage of my old life. It would take time to heal from this betrayal. It would take time to learn to trust again. But I had time. Julie hadn't succeeded in taking that away from me. The investigation into Julie's first husband moved quickly. Within a week, Detective Rodriguez called with news that confirmed my worst fears. We exhumed the body of Thomas Brennan, Julie's first husband. The autopsy revealed traces of antifreeze in his system, ethylene glycol poisoning. It's a method that's hard to detect unless you know what to look for. I felt sick. Julie had been poisoning her first husband slowly, probably over months, making his death look like natural causes related to his drinking problem. The original death certificate listed liver failure as the cause of death. Given his history of alcohol abuse, no one questioned it. But the antifreeze poisoning would have caused similar symptoms: nausea, confusion, organ failure. So she's done this before. More than once, we think. We found records showing she was married briefly before Thomas Brennan to a man named Robert Walsh. He died in what was ruled an accidental fall down a flight of stairs. Julie inherited his house and a significant life insurance policy. 3 husbands, 3 deaths, 3 insurance payouts. I had been husband number 4, and I would have been her 4th victim if Dave hadn't had the courage to call me. Mr. Henderson, there's something else you should know. Julie's lawyer is trying to work out a plea deal. She's offering to confess to the attempted murder in exchange for a lighter sentence, but she's still denying involvement in her previous husband's deaths. Will the plea deal go through? Not likely. With the evidence we've gathered about her previous crimes, the district attorney wants to prosecute her for serial murder. She's looking at life in prison without parole. That afternoon I made a decision that surprised even myself. I asked Detective Rodriguez if I could visit Julie in jail. Are you sure about that, Mr. Henderson? You don't have to face her if you don't want to. I need to hear her explanation. I need to understand how she could live with me for 18 years while planning to kill me. The Women's County Jail was even more depressing than the men's facility where I'd visited Marcus. They led me to a small room with plastic chairs and bulletproof glass. When Julie appeared on the other side of the partition, I barely recognized her. Gone was the carefully styled hair, the makeup, the designer clothes I'd grown accustomed to buying for her. She wore an orange jumpsuit, and her face looked older, harder, without her usual beauty routine, but her eyes were the same. Cold, calculating, completely devoid of the warmth I'd thought I'd seen there for 18 years. She picked up the phone on her side of the glass, and I picked up mine. Walter. Her voice was flat, emotionless. Julie. I suppose you're here to gloat. I studied her face, looking for any sign of the woman I'd thought I'd married. I'm here to understand. She laughed, a bitter sound. Understand what? How you could live with me for 18 years while planning to murder me? How you could kiss me goodnight while buying tools to sabotage my car? How you could tell me you loved me while arranging for my death? Julie leaned back in her chair, her expression shifting to something that looked almost like amusement. You really want to know? Yes. It was easy, Walter. Easier than you could possibly imagine. The casual cruelty in her voice hit me like a physical blow. You made it easy, she continued. You were so trusting, so eager to believe that someone like me could actually love someone like you. You never questioned anything. You never suspected anything. You just accepted whatever I told you. What do you mean, someone like you and someone like me? Julie's smile was cold. Walter, you're a 59-year-old mechanic who's never traveled anywhere, never done anything interesting, never been anything more than ordinary. I'm an attractive woman who could have had any man she wanted. Did you really think I married you for love? The words stung, but they also clarified something important. So why did you marry me? Security. You had a stable business, a nice house, good insurance policies. You seemed like you'd be easy to control and easy to live with. And you were for a while. What changed? You got boring, Walter. More boring than I ever imagined possible. Do you know what it's like to pretend to be interested in the same stories about car repairs over and over again? Do you know how exhausting it is to fake enthusiasm for baseball games and fishing trips and all the tedious things that made you happy? I thought about all the times Julie had seemed genuinely interested in my hobbies, all the times she'd encouraged me to talk about my work or my interests. It had all been an act. And Marcus? Marcus was different, younger, more energetic, more ambitious. He made me feel alive in a way you never could. She paused. Plus, he was useful. Useful how? He did the things I couldn't do myself. Bought the tools, researched the technical details, provided an alibi when I needed one. Marcus was completely infatuated with me. He would have done anything I asked. I realized that Marcus had been just as much a victim of Julie's manipulation as I had been. She had used his emotions against him, turned his feelings into a weapon. What about your first husbands? For the first time, Julie's composure cracked slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. Thomas Brennan, Robert Walsh? Did you kill them too? Julie was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, more careful. Those were different situations. Different how? Thomas was a drunk. He was destroying his health anyway. I just helped the process along. And Robert? She shrugged. Robert was an accident. He fell down the stairs during an argument. Even now, facing life in prison, she couldn't admit the full truth. She was still lying, still manipulating, still trying to control the narrative. Why didn't you just divorce me, Julie? Why murder? Because divorce would have given me half of what you owned. Murder gave me everything. She said it matter-of-factly, as if she were discussing the weather. Plus, with your life insurance policies, I would have been set for life. Marcus and I could have started fresh with enough money to do whatever we wanted. I felt a strange sense of closure hearing her finally tell the truth. For weeks I'd been torturing myself with questions about what I'd done wrong, how I'd failed as a husband, what signs I'd missed. But listening to Julie now, I realized that none of this was about me. I hadn't failed as a husband. I'd simply married a woman who was incapable of love, someone who saw other people as objects to be used and discarded when they were no longer useful. Do you feel any remorse at all? I asked. Julie considered the question seriously. Remorse for what? For not being the person you wanted me to be? For protecting my own interests? For refusing to waste my life? Pretending to be satisfied with mediocrity? For trying to murder me? She shrugged. I'm sorry you found out. I'm sorry the plan didn't work, but I'm not sorry for trying to improve my situation. The complete absence of guilt or empathy was staggering. She wasn't sorry for planning my death. She was only sorry she'd been caught. There's one more thing I need to know, I said. Were you ever going to kill Marcus? Julie's smile returned, colder than before. Eventually. Once I had what I needed from your death, Marcus would have become a liability. He knew too much and he was becoming too dependent, too clingy. I would have had to deal with him eventually. So Marcus had been right. He would have been her next victim. Why are you telling me all this now? Because it doesn't matter anymore. They have enough evidence to convict me regardless of what I say. And because... She leaned closer to the glass. Because I want you to know that every day of our marriage was a lie. Every kiss, every I love you, every moment of intimacy. All of it was an act. I want you to know that the woman you thought you loved never existed. She was trying to hurt me one last time, trying to destroy even my memories of our marriage. But her words had the opposite effect. Instead of devastation, I felt relief. The woman I'd loved had never existed, which meant I wasn't losing someone real. I was just letting go of an illusion. Thank you, I said, surprising her. For what? For showing me who you really are, for helping me understand that none of this was my fault. For the first time since I'd known her, Julie looked genuinely shocked. I hung up the phone and walked out of the jail, leaving her staring through the glass. That evening, I made a series of phone calls. First, I called my lawyer to discuss selling the house Julie and I had shared. I wanted no reminders of our life together. Then I called my insurance agent to remove Julie as the beneficiary of my life insurance policies. She would inherit nothing from me, just as I had inherited nothing real from my years with her. Finally, I called Dave to thank him for saving my life. Walter, I've been thinking about what happened, Dave said. I should have called you sooner. As soon as Julie started asking those specific questions about brake lines, I should have known something was wrong. You did exactly the right thing, Dave. You saved my life. What are you going to do now? It was a good question. My marriage was over. My relationship with my brother was destroyed. My entire life needed to be rebuilt from scratch. But for the first time in months, the future felt full of possibilities instead of threats. I'm going to start over, I said. Completely. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I meant it. The next morning I drove to a real estate office and put my house on the market. The agent, a friendly woman named Patricia, asked if I was moving because of a job change. No, I said. I'm moving because I want a fresh start. She nodded understandingly. Sometimes that's the best reason of all. As I signed the listing papers, I realized that Julie had done me an unexpected favor. By showing me her true nature, she had freed me from a marriage that was built on lies. By trying to kill me, she had forced me to examine my entire life and decide what I really wanted from my remaining years. What I wanted was truth, authenticity, real connections with people who actually cared about me. I was 59 years old. If I was lucky, I had 20 or 25 good years left. This time I wasn't going to waste them. 2 years later, I stood on the porch of my new house watching the sunrise over the mountains of North Carolina. The air was crisp and clean, nothing like the humid heat of my old hometown. This house was smaller than the one I'd shared with Julie, but it was mine completely. No memories of lies, no echoes of betrayal. The trial had ended 8 months after Julie's arrest. She was convicted of 3 counts of murder in the first degree and 1 count of attempted murder. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Marcus received a lighter sentence, 15 years for conspiracy to commit murder, because he had cooperated with investigators and testified against Julie. I never attended any of his parole hearings. As far as I was concerned, I no longer had a brother, but this morning as I sipped my coffee and listened to the birds singing in the pine trees around my property, I wasn't thinking about the past. I was thinking about Sarah. Sarah Mitchell was a 54-year-old nurse who had moved to North Carolina around the same time I had. She was recently divorced from a marriage that had ended when her husband left her for a younger woman. We'd met at a community center volunteer event, both of us serving meals to families in need. What struck me about Sarah wasn't her appearance, though she was attractive in a natural, unaffected way. It was her honesty. She talked openly about her failed marriage, her struggles with trust, her determination to build a life based on authenticity rather than illusion. She knew about my past. The whole story had been covered extensively in the local news back home. Instead of being frightened or judgmental, she had been compassionate and understanding. I think we both learned the hard way that some people are capable of terrible deceptions, she'd said during one of our early conversations. But that doesn't mean everyone is. We had been dating for 6 months now, taking things slowly, building trust carefully. She had met me this morning for coffee before her shift at the regional hospital where she worked in the cardiac unit. "What are you thinking about so seriously?" she had asked, noticing my thoughtful expression. "Just grateful," I had said. "Grateful to be alive, grateful to be here, grateful to have found someone real." She had smiled and squeezed my hand. "Me too." Now, as I finished my coffee alone on the porch, I reflected on how much had changed. I had sold my auto repair business along with my house, using the money to buy this property and start a small woodworking business. I made custom furniture and cabinets, work that required patience and precision but brought me deep satisfaction. My customers were neighbors, people I knew personally, people who appreciated craftsmanship and paid fair prices for quality work. It was a simpler life than I'd had before, but it was honest work that brought me genuine peace. The phone rang inside the house, and I went to answer it. The caller ID showed Detective Rodriguez's number. "Mr. Henderson, I wanted to call with some news about your case." "What kind of news?" "Julie's appeals have been exhausted. Her conviction is final. And there's something else. Investigators in 3 other states have linked her to suspicious deaths of elderly men she was involved with before she married any of her known husbands." I felt a chill. "How many people did she kill?" "We may never know for certain, but the FBI believes she may have been responsible for as many as 7 deaths over the past 20 years. You were very lucky, Mr. Henderson." After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen thinking about those other victims. Men who had trusted Julie, who had believed her lies, who had died never knowing that the woman they loved was their murderer. But I also thought about survival, about second chances, about the possibility of finding real love after experiencing the deepest betrayal imaginable. My phone buzzed with a text message from Sarah. "Hope you're having a peaceful morning. Looking forward to dinner tonight. I'm making that pasta you liked." I smiled as I typed back. "Can't wait. Should I bring wine?" "Already taken care of. Just bring yourself." Such simple words, but they represented everything Julie had never been capable of giving me. Genuine care, honest affection, the comfort of being with someone who actually enjoyed my company rather than merely tolerating it. That evening I drove to Sarah's house, a cozy cottage about 20 minutes from mine. She had decorated it with things that reflected her actual interests: medical journals, books about gardening, photographs from hiking trips with friends. Unlike Julie's carefully curated home, Sarah's house felt lived in and authentic. "How was your day?" she asked as she served the pasta, a question Julie had asked me thousands of times without ever really wanting to hear the answer. I told her about my work, about a cabinet project I was finishing for an elderly couple in town. She listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions about the wood I was using and the joinery techniques I'd chosen. I love how much pride you take in your craft, she said. It shows in everything you make. After dinner, we sat on her back porch, talking about our plans for the weekend. Sarah wanted to visit a farmer's market in a nearby town. I suggested we could make a day of it. Maybe drive through the mountains and have lunch at a place she'd mentioned wanting to try. That sounds perfect, she said, then grew quiet for a moment. Walter, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever worry that what happened with Julie damaged you in some way? That it made it harder for you to trust people? I considered the question carefully. At first, yes. For months after the trial, I questioned everything. Every kindness seemed potentially false. Every smile seemed like it might be hiding an agenda. And now? Now I think what happened with Julie taught me the difference between real affection and performance. Julie was always performing. She said what she thought I wanted to hear, acted how she thought I wanted her to act, but it felt hollow, even when I didn't realize why. Sarah nodded. What does real affection feel like? I looked at her, sitting curled up in her chair with a blanket around her shoulders, her face free of makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked comfortable, natural, completely herself. Like this, I said. Like sitting with someone who's genuinely interested in my thoughts, who enjoys my company without needing anything from me, who's comfortable being exactly who she is. She smiled. I feel the same way. As I drove home later that night, I thought about the strange journey that had brought me to this point. Julie's attempt to murder me had destroyed my old life completely, but it had also freed me to build something better. I had learned that trust wasn't about blind faith. It was about paying attention to consistency between words and actions, about recognizing genuine emotions versus practiced performances. I had learned that real love felt different from manipulation disguised as affection. Most importantly, I had learned that surviving betrayal didn't have to mean living in fear. It could mean becoming wiser, more discerning, more appreciative of authentic connections. 6 months later, Sarah and I were married in a simple ceremony in the mountains, surrounded by the friends we had made in our new community. No expensive decorations, no elaborate reception. Just two people who had found genuine love after experiencing the counterfeit version. Dave flew in from my old hometown to serve as my best man. After the ceremony, he pulled me aside. I'm proud of you, Walter. Not just for surviving what Julie did to you, but for not letting it make you bitter. I could have easily become bitter, I said. But I realized that would have been letting her win. She tried to kill my body and failed. I wasn't going to let her kill my spirit. That night, as Sarah and I sat on the porch of our new home together, she had moved in with me a month before the wedding. I felt a deep sense of peace that I had never experienced during my 18 years with Julie. Any regrets? Sarah asked, reading my thoughtful mood. About what? About not recognizing what Julie was sooner. About losing 18 years to someone who never really loved you. I thought about it seriously. No regrets. Those 18 years taught me what I didn't want in a relationship. They helped me recognize the real thing when I found it. And what is the real thing? I took her hand, feeling the calluses from her work at the hospital, the small scar on her thumb from a childhood accident she'd told me about. Real hands that had done real work, belonging to a real person who had faced real struggles. The real thing is this. Two people who see each other clearly and choose to build something together anyway. Two people who don't need illusions or pretenses to be happy together. Sarah squeezed my hand. I love you, Walter Henderson. I love you too, Sarah Henderson. And for the first time in my life, when someone said those words to me, I knew with absolute certainty that they were true. As we sat together in comfortable silence, I reflected on the strange way life had unfolded. Julie had tried to destroy me, but instead she had freed me to find genuine happiness. She had thought she was taking everything from me, but actually she had given me the greatest gift imaginable, the chance to build a life based on truth rather than lies. In trying to end my story, she had actually given me the opportunity to write a completely new beginning. And this new beginning, I knew, would be worth all the pain it had taken to reach it. 25 miles away, Julie sat in her prison cell, probably still believing that the world owed her something better than the life she'd chosen. But I didn't think about her anymore. She was part of a past that no longer had any power over my present or my future. I was 61 years old, married to a woman who actually loved me, building beautiful things with my hands, living in a place that felt like home. I was exactly where I belonged, and for the first time in my adult life, I was completely, genuinely happy. Julie had failed in every way that mattered. She hadn't just failed to kill me. She had failed to understand what would actually destroy me. What would have destroyed me was spending the rest of my life living a lie. Instead, she had inadvertently set me free to live the truth. And the truth, it turned out, was more beautiful than any fiction she could have created.